All year long, we've been hearing a ton of stories about companies that are closing, businesses that are laying people off, people losing their jobs, bankruptcies. And we just saw Red Lobster, guys. That was the big one that went bankrupt. And I didn't make a video on it because I saw so many other videos on the internet. I figured I'll just skip this one. Well, I'm not skipping this one because here's a double bankruptcy coming up right around the corner, okay? You have the burger chain BurgerFi and also Anthony's Coal-Fired Pizza, because BurgerFi owns Anthony's Coal-Fired Pizza. These guys are looking at filing bankruptcy right now. Why? I don't know. The economy is great. Why would they have to do that? So right now, these guys are claiming that the problem is with them and their business model is that they were supposed to be a good alternative to like cheaper fast food restaurants like McDonald's and Wendy's and all this. And it's a step above going to a fast food restaurant, but it's still cheaper than going to like a real sit-down restaurant, okay? I mean, BurgerFi is expensive, guys. I have one right in my neighborhood. I don't even go there because of how expensive it is. Like, you want to get a burger and fries there, you're looking at probably $14, $15, just that, without even getting a drink. So it's way too expensive. But here's what's happening right now, okay? That business model kind of worked when things were better, right? When people could afford to spend a little bit extra on going for a premium burger or getting a nicer pizza than Pizza Hut, then these business models worked. But now that the economy is slowing down, inflation has run rampant and has taken a toll on people's budgets, people are starting to trade down, okay? It's very similar to how we saw this story recently about Walmart, where they're actually doing really good right now because they're getting a lot of higher income individuals shopping there that didn't used to in order to stretch a dollar. So people that used to go to like Anthony's Coal-Fired Pizza are probably gonna go and get the deal at Domino's now, where you can get 2 pizzas for like, $14, whatever it is. It's a pretty good deal. People that are going to BurgerFi are going to go down and get McDonald's new $5 value menu deal that they're going to have pretty soon. Or they're going to go to Wendy's and get the $3 breakfast. Because even if people have the money right now, guys, everybody's being cautious on spending. Like everybody is not spending like they would if things were going great, because everybody kind of wants to wait and see what's going to happen next. It's an election year, there's a lot at stake for it, and with so many companies shutting doors and so many people getting laid off so far this year, it puts people in the mode where, hey, maybe I should think twice about spending money on something I don't really need to, because I might need that for a rainy day, which has proven to be true for a lot of people so far. Here's the other problem that these companies are running into is because they market themselves as a premium burger brand or a premium pizza brand, they have to buy more premium ingredients than places like McDonald's or Domino's have to buy, and that's why they can sell the product for less, because they're not buying as high quality of ingredients, okay? Things are so bad with BurgerFi right now that they hired Kroll Securities as an exclusive financial advisor to support an ongoing evaluation of strategic alternatives that they can look at right now besides filing for bankruptcy. And they're looking at this right now, and the outlook isn't looking too good. BurgerFi recently defaulted on their credit facility in April. Their creditor, which is True Capital Management, has agreed to a forbearance period until July 31st. And they're even going to loan BurgerFi an additional $2 million during this strategic review process. So basically they have the next couple of months to try to get their act together and see if they can save this business or not. Now luckily this isn't as big of a problem like with franchisees, because like McDonald's, you have franchisees that are taking it on the chin with all of these problems with McDonald's that they're seeing with the slowdown in business and people not coming in. But like, for example, BurgerFi, they have 102 locations and 75 of them are franchised, 27 are corporate owned. But still, it's nowhere near the level of something like McDonald's or Subway, where you have thousands or hundreds of thousands or even millions of franchise restaurants out there. And the company said with their most recent SEC filing that there are situations where the company might not be able to survive, and basically the crucial ability for them to survive right now all hangs on their ability to continue to access liquidity and to pursue and enter into a strategic transaction or seek a strategic transaction while in bankruptcy protections to maintain our listing on the NASDAQ. Basically, they're looking for people to give them money, guys, but who wants to put money into a business that's going under? Not many people, right? Some people might take a chance and see if they can turn it around, but without a clear plan to do so, it's already a sinking ship that just hasn't sunk yet. And so the reason I bring this up is because this is supposed to be a business that does well when the economy is doing well, right? They said that they cater to higher end fast food customers, basically. But if people aren't buying that right now, that must mean that the economy is not doing well, despite what we're being told. And you can believe that every week I am going to hammer this, because all I'm seeing are signs everywhere that things are not as good as we're being told. And this is just yet the latest one. They even literally said that their business model is intended to, bring in higher end fast food customers, and now those people are trading down to lower end fast food restaurants because they either can't afford it or they're worried about where things are going and they want to save the money. And we're starting to see more official reports on this. It's not just me on YouTube making gloom and doom videos every day. It's starting to become more official, guys. In fact, there was a story out today about how the Fed may have to worry about more than just inflation soon, because now they're starting to see more reports of concrete evidence that the economy is in fact slowing down. The core PCE numbers just came in this week, and that was at 2.8%, which also does not include food and energy, and that was up higher than expected, guys. That's already a sign that inflation is not going away like they keep telling us it is. There's problems with incomes versus spending right now. Incomes apparently rose 0.3%, and it was down from the 0.5% reading that we had in March, but personal spending rose just 0.2% in April, and in March it was 0.7%. So the spending is starting to come down dramatically. And when you adjust it for inflation, consumption and disposable incomes, they say, are falling by 0.1%. So consumption's going down along with disposable income. That doesn't seem like a recipe for a healthy economy, if you ask me. But in some ways it is, because one thing that we need to see happen for things to really turn around is we do need to see a slowdown, guys. We do need to see things start to go negative in order for prices to come back down to reality on anything, because everybody wants to see this never-ending growth in the stock market and real estate and all of that, but it all comes with higher prices on everything and higher inflation as well. So we're not going to be able to get all that under control until prices on things start coming down, which means spending has to come down, which means incomes have to start falling on their face like it looks like they are. And remember, this is what the Fed wanted. So now inflation is finally starting to catch up with everybody, because the incomes are not keeping up with it and the spending is finally starting to fall. And companies like Starbucks and Kohl's, they're seeing it, guys. Obviously, Anthony's Coal-Fired Pizza and BurgerFi are really feeling it, since they're contemplating bankruptcy right now. And we have another worrying sign too as well when it comes to business, all right? On Friday, the Chicago Business Barometer just fell to 35.4 in May, and in April it was at 37.9. And guess what? This is the lowest reading that we saw since May of 2020. So it sounds like things are starting to come full circle, because we had the reading of the pending home sales also fall to the lowest level that we saw since April of 2020. Now we're seeing the Chicago Business Barometer fall to the same levels of back then as well, guys. Like, this was literally the beginning of the pandemic, when everything was locked down and the economy was essentially on pause. And this is the numbers that we're seeing again now when things are supposedly booming. Let's not forget that. The interesting thing is, this might not be enough to actually make the Fed do anything with interest rates, because until all this starts to show up in the unemployment figures and the job listings, only then that's probably when they're gonna maybe start cutting rates. But it takes months for this to permeate into those figures, and it's just gonna help them keep the rates higher for longer and probably just do more damage to the economy. Although I think they should just do more damage now and get it all over with and just raise the rates until we get to the recession that we need to have. Here we have a house for sale for $2.3 million. They listed it back in March of this year. No price cuts and also no takers yet. But look at that. This house hasn't sold since 1985, and that last selling price was $125 grand. So like 20 times more than they paid for the house. They're asking for it now. And the property tax bill is up to $21,000 a year, because there's no homestead. It's probably a rental And my guess is the expenses on this house are going up so much they probably can't make a profit on it anymore, and it's pretty old, looks like it's in need of a lot of TLC, so somebody's going to have to buy this house, put a tremendous amount of maintenance into it, and have a property tax bill of about $45,000 a year. So the Fed is going to have to look at this and start acknowledging that we may be entering a period of stagflation. And you know, Powell said recently that he doesn't see the stag or the flation. That's his position now. He doesn't see any signs of stagflation. Of course he doesn't. But investors, on the other hand, don't believe that he knows what he's talking about, because the inflation rates aren't coming down. You know, they're at the same levels they were as of December of last year. You know, we've seen all these layoffs so far this year, all these bankruptcies happening, and so what they're saying is not really reflecting the reality for a lot of businesses and people's personal finances. All the GDP numbers are coming in lower than expected as well. You know, for the first quarter of this year, it was expected to be 1.6%. Now the expectation is down to 1.3%. For the second quarter, they were saying it was going to be 3.7%. Now it's down to 2.7%. So yeah, you can say those numbers are still positive, but let's not forget all the government spending that's happening right now to fund the war in Ukraine, everything that's happening with funding the illegal immigrant situation that's going on, all that counts towards GDP right now. So you can easily just say, if those two things weren't happening, then we wouldn't see any growth in GDP. It might actually be negative right now. Meanwhile, you have everybody's savings being completely eroded. The savings rate is abysmally low right now, so people aren't able to put hardly any of their paychecks away anymore, and it's all due to inflation. According to Jeffrey Roach, who is the chief economist at LPL Financial, he says that the first month of the second quarter here, we have seen consumer spending slow as disposable incomes are falling. This is something I've been saying for a while here now, and it's just now becoming more and more official. So more people are going to believe it now that the mainstream media are talking about it. But a lot of you guys who watch my channel know that this has been happening since the end of last year already. He also says that businesses need to prepare for an environment where consumers are not splurging like they were last year. Sounds like a slowdown in business is inevitable, huh? I mean, what do you expect, guys? You can't expect people to go out there and continue to spend like there's no tomorrow when their wages are not keeping up with inflation. They even just said that disposable incomes and spending are down 0.1% from, March to April. So a lot of people might be wondering, well, how is all this going to affect rate cuts? Because we keep hearing about all these, mystical rate cuts that haven't came so far in 2024. The entire stock market and the valuations at this moment are predicated on rate cuts happening this year. The longer that the Fed maintains higher interest rates, far beyond people's expectations, the more crash risk there is for the stock market. And they say that a rate cut could help support the big Magnificent Seven stocks, but it also could suggest the kind of economic weakness that won't underpin gains for the rest of the S&P 500 or the broader market. So right now, the Fed is hoping that consumer spending is going to continue to slow down, because that will help lower inflation without them having to resort to a rate cut. And that's kind of like achieving their soft landing scenario that they have in their minds, at least up to that point. But the problem is, if things continue to slow down like they have been too much, then corporate profits and stock prices are going to go down much more quickly than the Fed will be able to cut rates. So that will essentially cause the next recession. And that's where I think we're headed. We're already starting to see the initial signs of it right now. The only thing is that all of this has taken longer than anybody anticipated, guys. And I think the only reason for that is because of the sheer amount of money that was injected during the pandemic. That was the wild card that we've never seen happen before. And that's why it's taken years for this situation to kind of play out and get to where we are now, where you are seeing the bankruptcies, you are seeing the layoffs, you are seeing the spending slow down, you are seeing people pull back, you're seeing people not buy houses. It took a while, but we're getting there. And one thing I mentioned in a previous video is one reason that the unemployment numbers can be artificially low right now is because when someone loses a job, they can just run over and start doing driving for Uber or Lyft or DoorDash or whatever tomorrow, rather than wait for the unemployment checks to start rolling in. That seems to be a more practical solution. Well, these guys were in the news recently, and thanks DJ for sending this over. because they're saying that a lot of people who drive for Uber and Lyft and DoorDash are now earning well below minimum wage, even with the tips. Now, first of all, I don't know how accurate this is, because my first initial thought when I think about this is, if people were earning less than minimum wage doing this job, why would people continue to do it? You know, besides the flexibility, then there would be no real incentive, right? You see what's happening with real estate, and real estate agents are quitting by the thousands at the moment because the money's not there. And that's another flexible job that you can kind of do anytime, especially if you're doing it part-time and it's not like a real job like Uber or Lyft. But you're not seeing people quit driving Uber and Lyft by the thousands. In fact, you're starting to see more and more people continue to do it, which supports my theory on people are running to do this rather than jump on unemployment. But they analyze over 52,000 delivery, Uber trips, whatever, on almost 1,100 drivers in the Boston, Chicago, LA, San Francisco Bay, and Seattle metros in January of 2022. And what they found is that these people often earn less than local minimum wage, including the tips, after their expenses, okay? After expenses is key, because you're driving your own vehicle and all those expenses are on you, gas, repairs, maintenance, whatever. But notice the cities that they studied, guys. Boston, Chicago, LA, San Francisco Bay, and Seattle, like some of the most expensive cities in the entire country. So it's going to be harder to turn a profit on anything you're doing in places like that. And in fact, they put up this chart here in California to show you guys how much people are making net after pay with tips and after all their expenses, and it comes down to like, you know, $7.60 something an hour, $11 an hour, $11 an hour for different types of delivery jobs. But the funny thing is, these are all California numbers, and now California has a $20 minimum wage for fast food. So these guys can double their income overnight by just getting a job at McDonald's or at Wendy's or whatever. They say it's so bad for some of these delivery drivers that outside of California, a lot of these delivery drivers made only about 40 cents per hour when adjusted for their expenses. I mean, who's working for that? No one's gonna, you know, do this job and go home with 40 cents an hour and decide to show up to work again the next day. People just won't do it anymore. So that's the only problem I have with this type of research. Like, if this was actually happening, people wouldn't be doing it because it wouldn't be profitable enough to continue doing. Because when they factor in their entire earnings, in California, people were averaging about $21 an hour. Outside of California, it's about $19 an hour. When you add in the tips, people were making up to $25 an hour outside of California with their trips plus tips. But they say that expenses eat up a lot of the earnings. For delivery drivers, the expenses turn out to be about $7.44 per hour in California and $7.60 per hour outside of California. And here's the interesting thing, guys. A lot of people talk about corporate greed and all the record corporate profits that we've been seeing over the past few years. I even mentioned this in the video the other day. And they want those guys to pay more taxes. They want them to pay these people more who are driving for Uber and Lyft and all of that. But it doesn't really help anyone, because at the end of the day, what that does is it increases inflation, which makes the cost of everything you buy more, and these companies just pass those fees on to you. So if you order something with Uber or Lyft or whatever, say you order Uber Eats, they're just going to charge the customer more. They're not going to eat that. They have obligations to their shareholders to increase profits, not decrease them. So if they're forced to pay people more or pay more in taxes, they're just going to pass those expenses on to you, the customer. The other thing that they're trying to do is they're trying to regulate a bunch of these companies and force them to pay, you know, at least minimum wage for people who are doing all this driving. California has already been doing this since 2022. But if you ask a bunch of these gig workers, you know, I'll bet you many of them would say that they want to keep it as is, where they remain independent contractors and not employees of the company, because that changes the relationship. It changes the game for them. And part of the appeal of driving for Uber or Lyft or whatever is that you can kind of do it whenever you want. You can do it as much or as little as you feel like it, with no obligation and no relationship to the employer. And it benefits the employer because they don't have to pay you benefits, they don't have to give you a 401k, they don't have to give you nothing, no health insurance. And so it's kind of like a two-way street. That's how real estate agents work too. At my brokerage company, They don't give us any benefits. There's no 401k, there's no health insurance or anything like that. But in turn, they give you 90% of your commission. So it's a good deal. And you can do as much or as little transaction volume per year as you want. But the problem is, guys, all the local governments are trying to regulate this. They want these people to make minimum wage, and so they're implementing laws like you have to pay the difference if they're not making at least minimum wage and all this kind of stuff. So what they're going to do is they're just going to end up making these companies pull out of places that try to regulate it. You know, we're hearing rumors now about how McDonald's is thinking about pulling out of California because of how much this minimum wage problem is causing them slowdowns in their restaurants there. It's going to be the same thing moving forward with all these delivery driver companies that try to get regulated by local governments. They're just going to say, well, there's no more Uber and Lyft in San Francisco. There's no more Uber and Lyft in Minneapolis. That's one of the places they're trying to regulate this too. So companies aren't stupid. They're just going to leave and not service areas that aren't business friendly. That's also why you're seeing so many companies in general pull out of the state of California, because everything is so highly regulated, so highly taxed, it doesn't make sense anymore. And so it looks like it's just going to be a matter of time before all these local governments start getting a huge dose of reality. Once they start seeing all these businesses leave and their tax revenue fall through the floor, they're going to have to start rethinking their strategies. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.